It is such a gift to have with us today Ohio Supreme Court Justice Melody J. Stewart, who truly embodies the coming together of art, intellect, and service. Justice Stewart was elected in November 2018 to a full term as the 161st Justice to serve on the court. Prior to joining the Ohio Supreme Court, Justice Stewart served on the 8th District Court of Appeals, elected to an unexpired term in 2006 and twice re-elected to full terms. She served as the court's administrative judge in 2013. Justice Stewart has more than 30 years of combined administrative, legal, and academic experience. She was an administrator for a healthcare management company, a music teacher, a civil defense litigator, and a law school administrator and professor before being elected to the Court of Appeals. Justice Stewart earned a Bachelor of Music degree from the College Conservatory of Music at the University of Cincinnati, her law degree as a Patricia Roberts Harris Fellow from the Cleveland Marshall College of Law, Cleveland State University, and her Ph.D. as a Mandel Leadership Fellow at Case Western Reserve University's Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences. She was Director of Student Services at Case Western Reserve University's School of Law, and she was awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from Cleveland State University in 2018. Of historical note, Justice Stewart is the first African-American woman elected to the Ohio Supreme Court. Please join me in welcoming Justice Stewart.
Thank you, Habiba. First of all, that was a great exercise. When we got up here, I told President Snyder, don't get me off beat. Ruined my reputation. And in case you're wondering, we're both keeping our day jobs too. So, it was, first of all, thank you to all of you for being here, and thank you to the servers and preparers of our meal. Can we give them a round of applause, those who served us? Now, some of you may be wondering why it is that a Supreme Court justice was asked to be your keynote speaker. I asked myself the same question. Then I just decided, why not? But ironically, this is a full circle moment for me in a lot of ways. For one, the last time I was in this building, in this space, was November 6, 2018. Anybody know what that day was? Election Day, or was it November 8th? One of those days. It's a blur. But it was election night, and it was right here in this room that I discovered that I won an election to the Ohio Supreme Court. So it was kind of surreal work walking back in. Also for me, this is a full circle moment that I get to speak to you when one of my alma maters, the alma mater of my last degree, emphasis on last degree, at least one I have to get graded for and take credit hours for, is being honored at Case Western Reserve. So this really comes down to me about more than just being on the Supreme Court or being Supreme Court Justice, because at its core, the answer to why maybe I was asked to speak to you, and certainly why I chose to accept the invitation, was not so much what I do for a living, but it's who I am and as an individual and what role I play in our larger landscape and in our community in general. So again, the irony of my education, I started my formal education at Charles Orr Elementary School. If you're not familiar with it, it's on 101st off of Chester, Hough, in the Hough area of Cleveland. I started my education there, and then I went full circle and ended my education around the corner at University Circle at Case Western Reserve. In all actuality, I imagine my growing up was a lot similar in ways and different in other ways than a lot of the kids that the Positive Education Program serves. I was raised in a single-parent home by my mother, who was not formally educated. My mother grew up in the segregated South in Virginia at a time when schooling for Black or Negro children only went up to the 8th grade. Although I do have siblings, I grew up an only child, and my mother was almost 40 when I was born. I was very close to my mother. We were on public assistance when I was born. And I distinctly remember when my mother came to me and sat me down and told me that she had gotten a job at the post office and she would be working nights. I cried, and I cried some more. I asked her why she had to do that. I pleaded with her not to do that. I was young, I was about maybe 5 then. And I remember asking her why. Why couldn't she just stay home with me? After all, that's what mothers are supposed to do, right? And she explained to me how being on public assistance or being on welfare was temporary. It was to help when she didn't have a job and help her to stay home and take care of me. So I said, then why don't you just stay on the welfare and stay home with me? And she explained because it was temporary, it was designed to help people when they weren't in good shape, and that the things she wanted for me in life she couldn't get, and she needed to make a living doing a job. And so off to the post office she went. She would walk 5 blocks every night to and from the bus stop, going downtown to the main post office, which I think now is owned by probably Quicken Loans or Dan Gilbert or somebody, but the old courthouse near Tower City, and a teenager who lived upstairs in the apartment building. She and her family lived in the apartment building we lived in. She'd come down at night and stay with me, or I'd stay up with her family until my mother got home that morning. All my life, my childhood, I was either raised in the Hough area of Cleveland or into East Cleveland. Every time the neighborhood got a little rough, my mother decided it was time to go. My neighborhood wasn't particularly bad, at least from my perspective, but obviously from hers, it was. I remember the Hough riots. I remember being at the window and my mother telling me to get away from the window as I watched the armored trucks go by and the military men with their rifles drawn. And I had no idea what all of that meant. And I remember when our insurance man was shot in the lobby of our building. I remember hearing the gunshot and my mother and my sister, older sister, going down to tend to him for help, but my mother putting me in my room so that I wouldn't see the gunshot wound to his face. I think we moved shortly thereafter too. And so it was always a sense of protectionism, and my mother, and we had a household where my mother had the sounds of Motown playing. There was always music playing, more so than having the television on. Of course, back in the day when I was growing up, a lot of you, we only had, 3 channels? 3, 5, and 8, or we got excited when UAB came on, and not the 300 channels we have. And then, of course, the television went blank around 11 o'clock. And that ominous voice would come on. It's 11 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Anybody remember that? I mean, is it just a hoax? I'm remembering that, right? So we didn't watch a lot of television. My mother read the newspaper, she did crossword puzzles, and she taught me how to play Scrabble at an early age. I remember watching my mother read the newspaper, do the puzzles, try to figure out what it was she was doing. And the music that permeated through our house was not only Ray Charles and the Motown sound and Stevie Wonder, it was also Beethoven sonatas and Mozart and Chopin nocturnes. And that's probably where I first began my love of music and how it played such an integral part of my life. Backtrack to Charles Orr Elementary School when I was in kindergarten. Then there were pianos still in the classroom. And my kindergarten teacher would play the piano as we gathered around the piano and sung with her. And when the kids went out to recess, I'd go to that piano and try to pick out the songs that she played. I wasn't remotely interested in kicking a ball up and down the playground. And after several times of doing that, my piano teacher went to my mother and said, I think you should take her over to the Cleveland Music School settlement and have her take music lessons there. And so I started a career in music again in University Circle, right around that corner, my whole hub of education for almost all my life, and started studying music at 5 or 6 years old. The settlement then, I don't know if now too, you were required to take music theory before you can take an actual instrument. I hated music theory. I hated music theory. I almost didn't get to the piano, and I was the only person that survived my class. We all hated it as kids. It was boring. I couldn't, the beats, you had to read this. You just wanted to put your hands on something and bang something or play something or strum something. And so I had to take that for, I think, 2 years beforehand. Fast forward, guess what I ended up majoring in college? You got it. I have a bachelor's of music theory degree. So I did take music lessons that entire time. I ended up going to high school, being the accompanist for my school choir at Beaumont, and then, as you heard Abiba say, went on to the Conservatory of Music to study music there. Little known fact, but you all will know now, I also started a Master's of Composition degree at Cleveland State for a while. I just never finished it, so I didn't really want to finish the degree. I just wanted to learn the information. And so, when I defended my dissertation at MSAS, at the Mandel School, and I know there's a bunch of you here, shout out to my MSAS family. When I defended my dissertation at MSAS at Case, my kindergarten teacher, who lived on 115th off Wade Park, has lived in the same house for over 60 years. And I hadn't seen her in decades and eons when I was rushing to class one day and saw her and her husband walking around University Circle. So I occasionally visited them as I was doing the coursework at Case. She and her husband came to my dissertation defense. My kindergarten teacher was at my doctoral dissertation defense. So that, again, was my full circle moment. I'm going to wrap up just by saying how we can't just be who we are in our various positions and our various roles just for ourselves. We do need to work on changing the culture of fear, the culture of intolerance, of disrespect, and of ignorance. I've got to say, it is to President Snyder and the rest of the CWRU community here, it is an honor to be here to be your keynote speaker while the university is receiving this award. And I have to say to you, in my profession, on the judiciary, I am surprised at how little data-driven our decisions are in all of our justice system, particularly when it comes to juvenile delinquency, when it comes to our criminal justice system. I don't know why we don't rely on research-based data to help inform our decision-making, but we don't. And so maybe our colleges and universities can help the General Assembly and the judiciary in that regard. We all benefit when someone can achieve and attain the highest form of themselves, and I know that's what the Positive Education Program does to the children and the families it serves. I believe everyone has gifts to offer. Everyone, all the time, has the opportunity to contribute in some meaningful way to our society. How many times have we heard accounts of someone taking on a project or calling themselves helping others out, only to find out that you were actually the ones who benefited from the experience? This day, as we will have lots of others with the Positive Education Program, is a culmination of those of you who support this organization and organizations like them to help make our little part of the world a better place. I said on the election trail that is my goal if elected to the Supreme Court, or had I stayed on the Court of Appeals. And by the show of support here and the attendance, I understand that is your goal too. So help us to continue in those efforts, stay involved, and thank you for having me, thank you for listening to me, and thank you for supporting this organization.
I do want to thank Justice Stewart for being here today, for her support to PEP and her understanding of the difficult realities our young people face, and using her power and platforms to advocate for young people with needs like ours. Thank you.